It is a game day in Sunrise, Florida. On this episode of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, we are going to bring Erin Brown of the Hockey News to discuss what has happened between games 1 and 2 with the Panthers returning to practice and some of the continued storylines in this round 1 series against the Washington Capitals, all on today's episode of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome to this Thursday, May 5th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from PantherParkway.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. Don't forget to also follow the national show Locked On NHL and the Crosscheck NHL show with Andrew Berkshire and Mary Clark. We'll be covering all the postseason activities around the National Hockey League. So, Florida Panther fans, it's a game day. Florida Panthers coming right back at it. Game 2 tonight, 7:30 for everyone out of the region. It's going to be another ESPN2 broadcast for everyone in the region. It's going to be on Valley Sports Florida. So the Florida Panthers are looking to get back and even the series up after dropping Game 1 at home. You already lose the home ice advantage, and really, the focus right now for these Florida Panthers is just to even up the series, and then the mentality is to just get one in Washington to take home ice advantage back. But the Florida Panthers did return to practice on Wednesday at FLA Live Arena, and here to discuss that and some more of the storylines in relation to the Florida Panthers, she is a multiple-time guest on the show now, from the Hockey News, Erin Brown. Erin, how are you doing today?
Doing okay. How are you?
I'm doing well. Great to be staying in town throughout the first 2 games of the series, and just to sink in everything that's good and bad about the last few days. Of course, you never want to start down 0-1 in a series, especially when you have home ice advantage all throughout the playoffs. And of course, there's going to be some takes. There's going to be possible overreactions, but then there's going to be the side of calmness and being at ease, and that's kind of where I sit in even being able to go to sleep, rest up, and get back to the arena to watch these guys practice again, even though it was an optional practice today. But I'm more of the side at ease in all of this. How is Erin Brown feeling?
I don't know. You know what? I think more shocked. I thought Game 1 was probably their worst game of the year. And I know they've lost games. They had some really just ugly games during the year where, I remember that first road trip after the win streak. They did not do very well on that. What really kind of shocked me in Game 1 was that they could get nothing going. And it was almost like I've used this analogy if you've talked to me in the last couple days. It was almost like they had a race car at the starting line. They just floored the pedal and spun out. And I mean, you look at how they started that game. One of the earliest penalties they've taken all year. Then they end up on a 5-on-3. And when you're in that situation, you're just trying to survive. And that was, as I'm watching that segment of the game go on, it was like they didn't just need to survive this. They barely survived it. But it just seemed to set the tone for everything. It just threw them off the entire game. I don't know if we're going to get to this later. I thought the officiating was not great. I thought the linesmen were trying to be a little too, insert themselves in the game, why they just would not drop the puck, why they kept tossing guys. Some people I was sitting next to in the press box, we were, just saying that this is ridiculous. It's getting to the point where, they're dumping more guys from the faceoff circles than they are having faceoff. So it's just that when you add that into the mix, like they just could get no flow going. There is, especially those forward lines. There was just it looked to me like some of those just not great Panther teams. Like they had a little skill, but then when you had to put them all on the ice and expect them to click and make their passes and time everything, it was just all off. And that, to me, I can't really remember too many games where almost from start to finish, they looked all off. And that's, I think, what happened in game one.
Mm-hmm. And some of that might have been first game jitters of the team, depending on who you ask. But I also take into consideration as well kind of the last week of the regular season, where they were kind of taking their foot off the gas pedal. Of course, half the lineup didn't play in the last two games on that back-to-back in Montreal and Ottawa. So after not really going at full speed in the last week of the season, part of me maybe thinks that that's why they went on the the Washington Capitals at least went on that 5-on-3 a little early. Like you said, that race car analogy with I think of Mario Kart right away.
Yeah, exactly.
They're pressing the acceleration too tight, and then you stumble in your tracks of the Phantom Menace, Star Wars Episode 1.
We can pretend that episode didn't exist. Start at 2, everybody. Just start at 2. That's all you really need.
Yeah, so I kind of think about that, and maybe that could have been a reason why the Florida Panthers just didn't get to the game or get up to speed with where they wanted to go. Do you think that last week where they weren't going at full speed had maybe a little bit to do with it?
Yeah, and even last week there were some concerns, I think. I know they were sitting guys. They were trying to keep guys from getting hurt, and fair enough. I think you can see when Ovechkin got hurt, everyone gasped, and rightfully so. So I think that they were definitely not playing the way they have played all season, which honestly to me they've played playoff hockey since day one. It felt like they came into the season and said, "Hey guys, remember what we did we had to play in Tampa? That's what we need to do all year," and they did. The Toronto game felt like the last time they were playing in that level, and then it started to kind of like taper off. I think Tampa, no. Boston, no. They got some energy back, I think, by putting some of those kids in Ottawa. Montreal, absolutely not. So it's almost, they've had a week of, we'll just say, inconsistency, where they haven't been able to keep their foot on the gas the whole time, and maybe that is also why they came out just gunning on that the first few minutes, and it was just too much. And maybe that was another thing in just kind of using Tampa as the experience last year. That was a very, very different series in the sense that it was very, well, first of all, they played each other twice before they got to the playoff series. That was a little ugly. And then it was a rivalry series. And, you figure they had to be very, very amped up for that. If they were anything less, they would have never stood a chance against Tampa. So Washington's not the same team as Tampa. They're missing some pretty important pieces. I'm pretty convinced Ovechkin is hurt. He's playing, but I don't think he is 100%. And I think they just came out and were expecting a Tampa series, and they didn't necessarily need to be that amped, and it just came back to haunt them.
Mm-hmm. I think also what kind of threw the Florida Panthers off in a way is the fact that these are also two completely different teams from the last time they faced as well. I mean, you think about it, the season series between the Florida Panthers and the Washington Capitals all came in the month of November. So any scouting that the Florida Panthers might have done, I'm not saying throw it out the window, but it wouldn't tell the whole story and how to prepare for this team. Yeah, you could point to mistakes here and there, but teams change throughout the season. Sure, you can mix up the schedule in different type of ways, but that Florida Panthers team at that time was still not winning road games at a consistent rate that they were as well. And the fact that there's that gap there as well. Now that they have a game in, I think that is like, okay, now now the coaching staff is probably telling the players, now we know and remember how fast this team is or how slow this team is, how they get in the way of passing lanes as well. Now that they have a game under their belt, I'm expecting a better showing in game 2.
I would like to think that as well. I'm with as well as they've done this year, it has really felt like uncharted territory. Is this team as good as the numbers say, or is there something that we're seeing a flaw? Right? Is there's just something that is not there, and we've just not pinpointed it up to this point? I think as far as not seeing Washington, even Coach Burnett brought this up before the series even started. How it would have been nice to have seen them at least one more time since November. So that's a factor. And even when they saw them in November versus now, both teams have evolved. So absolutely, I think that's maybe a lack of familiarity. I would like to think that they could see any game they wanted on replay, pick things apart. But I think on ice, it's a different situation. So for all we know, that played into it. But I think now that they have some measurement of just what to expect from Washington, they know where they need to adjust. For one, it's getting shots. I think I know it's the playoffs, but one thing that stood out to me, they actually out hit Washington in game 1. They out hit them 56-43, and it just seems like yes, there are players on hitting, and that's fine. But when you're getting kind of everyone into the mix on that, maybe not such a great idea. It's just not their style. It takes that when you're hitting, you're taking your energy away, and they are very much a team built on speed. And if you don't have the energy for the speed, it shows. And I thought it showed in game 1. They were not playing up to the speed that they normally do. They were not easily getting pucks in the battles. They were not necessarily beating out Washington players for those pucks. They were not blowing past Washington players like they have done in past games. So I think that they kind of know where, there's a measuring stick now. So now the key thing is, can you keep your emotions in check, number one? And number two, can you make those on ice adjustments to, exploit the weaknesses that Washington may have shown, which was very few.
And the fact that we have a little bit of recency bias now for the Panthers as well, and that it's recent, now they're in a better spot to make those adjustments. But we're going to transition over to the next segment where we're going to talk about today's practice and some of the reactions coming out of practice. Do we agree? Do Erin and I agree with those reactions, or are they warranted? But first, we're going to tell you all about Athletic Greens. And what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotic and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients support your gut health, your nervous system, and your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. All the things. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. With just one scoop in a cup of water every day, that's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that it's athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And for your next listen of the day, make sure to check out the Locked On Now podcast. It's nightly recaps of every NHL game with analysis from our local experts. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. So second segment here on this Thursday, May 5th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. And happy Cinco de Mayo for anyone who celebrates out there. So, Erin, today, one day after the Florida Panthers lose game 1, the very next day coming into FLA Live Arena, there is a optional practice. The only players to participate in that optional practice that dressed Carter Verhaeghe, Mackenzie Weegar, and Spencer Knight. And boy, a lot of the reactions online after dropping a game is one that I do not necessarily agree with. And the reactions is, why is this an optional morning skate after dropping game 1? Personally, I believe that there would have been an optional practice regardless of win or lose of game 1. And I get it. It doesn't look good on the outside. But I think of the mental side of things when you're coming to the rink and hockey is your job for a lot of the players who didn't practice. And there's a picture that was sent to me of players kicking around a soccer ball outside of the arena for the players that didn't practice. But I also think about when you're laying it loose a little bit, because the Stanley Cup playoffs are a grind, that it's a little therapeutic being outside in the sun, getting some vitamin D, and for players to be a little at ease that this team doesn't need, as good as practice is, they don't need that to be necessarily on the ice to get that extra boost and motivation in order to come prepared for game 2. That's where I sit on that. What about you?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that, it would be one thing if they said, oh, well, we didn't do anything wrong and, it was their fault. Or I mean, we're overlooking things, right? Like, okay, so they're not on the ice. I have no doubt there was a video session breaking down all the mistakes that were made yesterday. I have no doubt that they were discussing, how can we make adjustments here? Notice what they're doing here. So I mean, if most of the time was spent doing video sessions today, why is that a bad thing? Why do they have to be on the ice? If they can see what the corrections are that need to be made. These are highly skilled players. They are professionals. They can make those adjustments. I mean, I'm sure all of us have been in some situations with our own jobs. I can think of a couple for myself where, to get better at things, you don't necessarily need to be in that exact situation, right? Like you can do things on the side that maybe, help your mentality, hopefully, maybe having a little fun outside, kicking a soccer ball around, it just gets the blood flowing, keeps everyone feeling comfortable, loose. But I'm sure they had a lot of just had some fun doing it too. So get yesterday out of your mind in that regard, so exactly. I think it's just to think that, a pro team anywhere, any pro team, that the only way that they can improve is just by being on the field, running through drills. That's just not realistic. There are many other things that are part of the professional game that players need to take advantage of and make, their game whole. So I don't think that an optional skate is any big deal. Just for reference, I'm pretty sure that Tampa Bay yesterday had, I believe, an optional skate. They did a lot worse than the Panthers did. So that's going to be something that's, it's time of year. Let's make sure, they're managing the bench correctly. I think that the fact that Verhaeghe and the ones that stood out to me as far as being out there on the ice, I think Verhaeghe, he had a little bit of a rough game. Not that he was horrifically bad, but he was not himself. I don't think. And just kind of looking at his stats, he played just under 14 minutes. He did have an assist. He had 3 missed shots. So he didn't really factor in the way he normally does. And granted, I know that the Barkov, Huberdeau were probably taking up some of his ice time. Same with Mackenzie Weegar. I know. Well, let's not beat a dead horse. He didn't have the best game. It was a rough game for him. But you know what? He was out there just kind of doing some practice. For him, that might be the way that he shakes things off. So, if other guys don't need to shake things off that way, that's what they do to get better. Everyone's going to be different. And I don't think anyone needs to be looking deep into this like, oh my gosh, one practice is not going to solve every problem. So.
And the team is still bonding too. I think people are forgetting that this team is still together. Everyone's coming and over to the arena still, and that there is some camaraderie there too within each other. And that I know sometimes what's out in the open versus what's behind closed doors, but even just seeing that, you see that a lot of smiles between the way they're talking to each other. It's not just it's not I have a hard time believing that when we see the players talking to each other and laughing, even at practice when the media's there, I doubt that's for show, because I mean, you don't get to 58 wins without having some type of chemistry off the ice, and you have to like each other in order to play better with each other. So that's why I think an opportunity to kick around a soccer ball is just a way to just get a little laugh going. I know this is a serious time of year as well, but it's just a way to ease the mind as well. So I mean, I again, nothing more to read into this.
Yeah, absolutely not. Like I said, this is kind of common practice, and especially with guys having a maybe getting banged up a little bit. There's no reason to think that anything is wrong, but just you just take things a little bit easier on the body. You're going to get banged up, and even last game, Ekblad, Oberto, Barkov, and Uyghur, they all played over 20 minutes. So I know that's maybe that's not something you want to be talking about in game one, okay? Or you're already getting your best guys into that high amount of playing time. But you do have to keep that in mind. And so, yeah, if they need to do optional practices, they're going to do optional practices. And I think at this point, they did win 58 games. So, they've done something right all year. The players know what works for them. You got to trust that if it worked for 58, why would it not work for future ones?
I agree completely. So they're gonna. I have a hard. I think that they're gonna come into games very motivated and maybe a different pep in their step. But next segment, we're going to talk about what we want to see differently in game two, some of the injury updates on the other side for the Washington Capitals, and a little bit of the inexperienced Florida Panthers in this first round series. But first, we're going to tell you all about BetOnline. And BetOnline is your number one source for all your sports betting stats and info. Find all the sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball, Stanley Cup playoffs, and this week's run to the Roses as the Kentucky Derby is back. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Third and final segment here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. I'm Armando Velez. I got Erin Brown here from the Hockey News, and a little bit of an injury update for the Washington Capitals is that Tom Wilson will be a game time decision for tomorrow, according to Peter Laviolette. He didn't play. He didn't even exceed 2 minutes of total ice time on Tuesday night's game against the Florida Panthers, but. This question can go either any which way, but as far as the Florida Panthers coming into game two, what is something that you want to see differently from this Florida Panthers team? Whether it's like penalties, whether it's like converting passes or stretch passes or breakaways. What is something that you want to see differently for the Florida Panthers coming out of the gate in game two?
I think discipline is probably the first thing, and again, I will tie what happened in that first period very much to them being a little bit overamped. But I think if they can get kind of those emotions in check, maybe just and this is going to sound terrible because I know it's the playoffs, but maybe just kind of take themselves out of a mindset of going, it's the playoffs. Is that going to add some pressure? Maybe. So you just go back to say, let's go back to what works. Let's just play our game. Let's make sure we're good on possession, supporting one another in terms of, just simple passes to get breakouts. As far as the power play goes, they only had 2 chances last game, and they did not look very good at all. So maybe just kind of, go back to let's be poised. Keep it simple. Don't try to overdo things when they always try to get, pretty, make that extra pass. And we could probably say Jonathan Huberdeau was guilty of that in at least one spot in game 1. I think when Barkov was breaking to the net, why Huberdeau didn't take the shot. Okay. So maybe just, again, keep things simple. Go back to what worked for you for pretty much most of the season. Don't get drawn into the head games. They can't afford it. They just absolutely cannot afford it. They're really not built for that. And although again they have some good pieces that can kind of stir the pot, the top 9 is really not, it's not cut out for that. That's not what they're there to do. You don't want, Anthony Duclair and Carter Verhaeghe throwing punches. You don't need that. So, just get back to what your game is. Rely on that speed. Blow past those defenders. Washington didn't look particularly fast to me either. Florida just looked incredibly slow and kind of, again, worn down from trying to play a physical game when that is just not their game. So, yeah, I think it's just, just the first step. Just keep your emotions in check. Be focused on what's worked for you this whole time. So,
yeah, a little bit of an undisciplined play by Mason Marchment. It looked that he cup checked Anthony Mantha in game 1, and Anton Lundell had an opportunity to speak to us on Wednesday, talking about his experience for playoff hockey, getting his feet wet. But I know this is his first Stanley Cup playoff game, but I like this third line for the Panthers is a big reason to where they got to where they got to with the experience of Sam Reinhart. I know he hasn't been in a playoff game until now, but now that they have a game under their belt, I'm very confident that this third line is going to definitely find a way to have a different amount of energy, because we were even talking about it at the practice today. Anton Lundell, he's played in World Juniors, he's played in World Championships just last year. So it's just, and like you said, getting back to their game at the end of the day, the fundamentals of hockey and what they do is something that they're accustomed to. It's just the teams are better, and how do you make those in between game adjustments and even adjustments in the intermission.
Yeah, and like you said, with Lundell, I think that third line has been so key for this team, because you've got an 80+ point guy out of Sam Reinhart. You've got Mason Marchment's a 40 point guy. That's probably a shocking thing to say. And Anton Lundell's in the middle of that. I think 40 points as well. So that's been a really a crucial piece, because if the first and second lines get shut down, that third line has kind of been the catalyst to just kind of break the other team. Like, okay, fine, you can defend the first 2, but can you defend us? And Marchment, I felt, got pulled out of a good headspace very early on. Was playing more of that physical game, and I think it made life a little bit tougher for Lundell and Reinhart, because then they couldn't play that skilled game, right? So I think that line was a little bit off. I don't think Lundell was particularly bad. I think that again, like you said, he's played on bigger stages. The Worlds are very significant. World Junior, very significant, and he's very young. So the fact that he's been fine handling those, I don't think this is, I won't say that much different, but he's been in those situations. So I think, again, it's just getting back into that right headspace, saying, let's just, let's play our skilled game. Let's not get drawn into, the pushing and shoving, the garbage stuff that takes your mindset out. But then when your mindset's out and you just want to start hitting people, then it takes that energy away to have the skilled game. So they really have to, I think, just, yes, be disciplined, and just show it with their skill. Don't be throwing punches or trying to one up guys, in a scrum afterward. It doesn't get them anywhere.
And more of any team, whether they're a contender or not, is how you handle adversity when you're down. And are we going to see the Cats try to go for that extra hit after a whistle? Are we gonna see Sam Bennett, something like last year against Tampa Bay, charge from the center of the ice for a hit? I'm hoping not, but a true testament of a team is what they do while they're down. Are they gonna be the one to initiate dropping the gloves as well? Are they gonna try to get into the goalie's head by being right on the doorstep, and making them feel uncomfortable to the point where and how they chirp at them too?
And,
so
and it's funny you say that. It's funny you say that, because even last night there was something I noticed where Gudas of all players, kind of not charges the crease. I want to be like diplomatic in my words here, right? But goes right up to the crease. I've no doubt he was saying something to Vanasek and Czech. I have no doubt he's probably talking trash, but was like, do you really have to go that far out of your way to do something like that?
Mm-hmm.
And then, you guys don't back it up with any action. So don't get me wrong. I know that trash talking is definitely part of a game, but yeah, that extra scrum afterwards, it's probably not something you want to get tied into, because all it did yesterday, it seemed like it just wore the Panthers down. It didn't really wear down Washington. So what's going to wear down other teams is that speed. It's just that relentless fight for the puck, the speed. Those are the things that's why part of what made Florida so good this year is that they were willing to do those things, and they just really were not on top of that as well as they have been in the past. So yeah, maybe just kind of bite the bullet on it and let them say something terrible. Just don't get involved. It doesn't necessarily pay off all the time, and especially if you're not built for that.
Yeah, and especially I know in the playoffs you're gonna put your body on the line, and even we saw a triple overtime game with the Rangers and Penguins, so you're gonna log a lot of minutes. But if you don't have to force logging a lot of minutes by, yeah, sure, if there's a 5-minute misconduct for a fight, even though you don't the other team doesn't go on a power play, you're still hurting your team in a way where players might be double shifting as well, logging up that ice time that they might not need to log up. So that is really, as a ref myself, I always tell people, play to the whistle. And I hope that, especially if the Panthers are down, that hopefully they listen when it comes to playing to the whistle.
Yeah, and I think that it's just, again, they don't have weaklings on their team. That's just not the game they play. It's just not. They wear people down by their speed and their puck hounds. If they don't have the puck, they want it, and that was just really, it was just not present yesterday. That's why I said it reminded me so much of the games of like the 2000 teams, or you have some skill here and there, but like there just was. They don't work to the level they need to work. So, and it's funny because you mentioned Sam Bennett. Can we give Sam Bennett some credit for not crossing the line? Because he was really solid. I thought that second line was really good in game one. Obviously, he had the goal that got them got the game tied. I think that was a good momentum swing for them. So the other thing is that he just looking quickly, he had 8 hits, no penalties. So he was playing right on that line. And I know he's talked about that. You know, there is that fine line in playoff hockey where you have to play intense, but you can't cross the line. He did not. So, you know, give him credit for kind of maybe learning from that Tampa series last year. He was right where he needed to be. Unfortunately, just some of his teammates were not where they needed to be. But maybe they can look at him as an example and see that, hey, this is what you need to do. Just don't cross that line.
And even though it wasn't a long-term fit in Calgary for Sam Bennett, the few playoff games that Sam Bennett did play for Calgary, he's shown up. So we've seen Sam Bennett over and over again come through in the playoffs. So got to give a lot of credit to Sam Bennett as well. But he's continued to that theme from when he was in Calgary, even though in the regular season and towards the end, it was just a need for a change of scenery, and now he's blossoming into a consistent second line center. So happy for Sam Bennett with that change of scenery. He just talked about it just a few weeks ago and how it has helped them free up his game more. At least he feels that, especially emotionally as well. So got to give credit to Sam Bennett and kudos to him. And of course, no, like you said, 8 hits, no penalties. That's encouraging as can be.
And a goal. And a goal. I mean, and then again, I know, that second line just they seem to click pretty nicely there. So and he was on the ice for obviously the Giroux goal too. So I think that was definitely a bright spot, especially since Huberdeau was taken off that line for a little bit, but they still they looked good. They looked fine last night. I thought that they were the offensive bright spot when I don't think there were many offensive bright spots.
So we'll see whether this team can definitely continue doing this in game 2, at least the second line, and of course we're hoping that the rest, it could trickle down to the rest of the lineup for this Florida Panthers team. But Erin, I want to thank you for coming on this episode of Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, a postseason edition of the show, as we prepare for hopefully the Florida Panthers tying up the series even at 1. Once again, 7:30 start on Thursday night at FLA Live Arena, Bally Sports Florida for people in the region, ESPN2 for everyone outside of the region. So Erin, for everyone listening, tell the people who are listening where they can find you and your work online.
So you can follow me at Rinkside on Twitter. Otherwise, keep an eye out in the hockey news. That's where my work does appear. If you have a subscription, thank you. We do appreciate that.
Absolutely. Make sure to read Erin's work, and of course read her live tweets as she and myself will be doing all throughout the postseason. So Erin, thank you so much once again.
Thanks.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast so you'll be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On NHL and the Crosscheck NHL show with Andrew Berkshire and Mary Clark will be covering all the regular season activities around the National Hockey League. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And for your second listen of the day, make sure to listen to today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Hosts Steele Roden and Flip Livingstone help you be the expert of your fantasy team. Follow the Locked On Fantasy Hockey podcast on the Odyssey app or wherever you get podcasts. So Armando Velez with Erin Brown. And you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.